Well, one person that I think does not feel safe is the barrister Steven Barrett, who's been such a great patriot for this country. But nonetheless, he's going viral at the moment for an incident that took place at Marylebone Station. Now, look, Steven, many people have seen this on the internet and on Twitter, but many people haven't. So why don't you make it really, really simple and explain exactly what happened?
So, and by the way, just in case nobody can see it, that's one of the bruises. What happened was that Marylebone put in place extra security provision like it was some sort of mass crowd control event. And it was a Sunday night. I'd just actually been on a rival TV station about half an hour earlier. And there were about 20 of us and a crying baby. And it was absolutely obvious that we didn't need these something temporary barriers, and we certainly didn't need these pumped up security guards. So I made a tweet and sent it, which everybody can see. I quite clearly direct my eye at the management of Chiltern Railway. They are the real problem when you come across something like this. As I said to one person who worked for Chiltern, obviously I don't blame you. Obviously I understand that you're made to do all this, but it is a bit silly. And so to another person, one of the pumped up security guards, I said, this is ridiculous. Pointed to the barriers. By the way, just so that your listeners and viewers know, I'm a middle-aged man. I had a Christmas jumper and red cords on. I was holding a Waitrose bag for life with shopping in it in one hand, and my tweed coat in the other, and getting out my phone to try and take a picture. That this is not the most threatening man in the world. Anyway, no. I said that this is ridiculous, and immediately he bristled. And it's something, Andre, that I think we need to talk about openly. Power goes to people's heads.
Well, as I always used to say in my university student union, you wouldn't believe what an ego boost a T-shirt with security written on it and a Motorola walkie-talkie is.
No, and we know this from psychological studies, and it's completely ridiculous. And perhaps I'm overconfident because I don't expect to be treated this way in any way. But
just to be clear, so you've arrived at the station, you're queuing for your train. There's 20 of you, a few overweight middle-aged people and a crying baby, and you've got all the barriers, and you've got some thick-necked meathead demanding that you stay within some sort of kettle pen, if you like.
All of which I, of course, did.
Yes.
So that's the other thing to point out. I was fully compliant at every stage. And so I said they were ridiculous. He said something ridiculously aggressive in response. And I just said, well, you're a clown then. And then he said, and you could see in his eyes, it's like when they get drunk. He just said, right then, you're not travelling today. I can do that. And those words are sort of relished over. And it's like, and I just went, I don't think you can. I've got a valid ticket. And so I went to talk to somebody I considered more senior, at which point he followed me and started grabbing me and saying, you have to leave the station. And I said, but I really don't think I do. Let me have a conversation with this man. And then the other man, I'm afraid, rather took his side immediately. And so there the two of them are, grabbing me and forcing me out the station. Now, Andre, you know this, and I know this. People make all sorts of false allegations.
Yes.
So I just did and I've had a ragdoll cat. If anybody listening or watching knows what ragdoll cats do. You just go limp. I wasn't going to have any allegation that I hit anybody or was aggressive in any way. I'm not capable.
A lot of that going round, Stephen, believe me.
I'm trying to hold on to my shopping. I'm just like, fine, if you want to do this, you will literally have to drag me out the station. I think I muttered something about candy. As I'm being dragged across the floor, I said to them, I'm in shock, but I just said to them things like, you do know that I'm a lawyer. I went with lawyer because I thought that would be...
There's nothing, without being funny, Stephen, there's nothing that says Merry Christmas like you limply on the floor, hair everywhere, shouting, I'm a lawyer, I'm like Gandhi. Right.
Well, I didn't even shout it. I didn't even want allegations of shouting. So it's in this conversational tone. I just said, you do know that I'm a lawyer. And they just said, we don't care. It's like, okay. Well, I'm sort of a bit of a journalist.
But what they will do, I remember being at Warrington Bank Station and I threw away a crisp packet. And when I came back, I was being really shouted at by one of the staff. And I said, look, I've just gone to the bin. You can't leave this here. It's a security threat. And then basically, when I got screamed at, and then 4 security came up and surrounded me. And what a friend of mine said is, what he'll have done is he'll have gone straight on the radio and said, this bloke threatened me. So presumably, the meathead will falsely claim that you threatened him.
Well, I'm pretty sure that's what happened. I mean, just to finish the story, I was then dragged across. Sliding across the station concourse isn't that bad an experience. I got a bit dirty from that. But then when they got to the outside bit, they have the textured concrete for the blind people, quite rightly. But I was dragged physically over that, and that sort of made a lot of wound. That's where all the blood and the big damage came from, because by now there was a gap between my shirt and my trousers, and my bare skin was just rubbed over that. So that's the really painful one. And then they literally dumped me outside Marylebone Station on the floor, and I'm afraid that's when I got up, and I just immediately made the video because
you can see yourself shaking because you're upset.
Yes. Well, what then happened is I then call a few people. And I was on the phone, actually, or I was calling Toby Young, who runs the Free Speech Union, because I thought it would be prudent to talk to Toby. And everybody I called, I literally said the same thing to. You're not going to believe this. You might need to sit down, but. And out came a man in a high-vis vest. And I thought, he's going to try and shush me away from the station, despite the fact I'm on public land and I have every right to be on public land. And I've just had this shocking thing happen. So I was a little bit curt to him, and I just said, look, I'm on the telephone. And so he went away. And then about sort of 15 minutes, he came back and he said, are you free to talk to me now? And I went, I'm sorry if I was curt to you. And he went, okay. And then he put a series, he was called Mr. Gumbo. He turned out to be the station manager. And he put a series of really quite ridiculous allegations to me.
You're racist to him, you threatened to punch him.
And my arms were going everywhere, despite the fact I'm quite a weak man holding a bag of Waitrose shopping.
And you also have, and without being rude, you also have a problem, which means that actually you wouldn't physically be able to fight somebody.
Yes, that will come along and bite them in the. I mentioned that briefly to Mr. Gumbo, but he very politely didn't wish to pry. But that may well come out if this farce carries on.
So you have made a formal complaint then?
No, I don't want to make a formal complaint because that gives power to them. I don't want to involve the police because the criminal justice system is broken and blocked up anyway. And
the risk is, I guarantee you, if you phone the police, you'll be arrested for racially abusing him. I guarantee you.
The police aren't the answer. I mean, these are overtooled people who shouldn't have behaved the way they have, but they're young gentlemen and they have the lives ahead of them. The real problem is Chiltern Railways. So what I will do is explore ways to punish Chiltern Railways. That's what I want to do, and to make sure that this does not happen to.
But did Mr. Gumbo? Right. Why are we calling the station manager?
Okay, the station manager. He's a very nice man.
Did the station manager? Did you get the impression he was sympathetic?
After 10 minutes of these ridiculous allegations, at which point he realised that there really was no way that I was in any way violent or aggressive, and it isn't in my nature. And then he started saying things like, well, we do have a lot of trouble with football fans. And I said, well, Mr. Gumbo, it won't surprise you, but I don't have a football team. And then I started showing him pictures of my dogs, and then he told me about his children and his grandchildren, and we had a really lovely chat. And then he decided I could obviously travel that evening. Unfortunately, it was 2 minutes to the next train, and he just looked at me and said, you're not going to make it. And I said, I take no offence from that. I really don't have the body for running for a train. And so then he stayed with me for 20 minutes, just chatting nicely about his family, about his grandchildren, about all the human things I do. You know me, Andre. You've seen how I interact with all types of people. Your organisation knows how I treat
What about? Let me go the other side of this. These station staff are pretty used to people threatening them, abusing them, bullying them. I mean, can I tell you, I got assaulted on the Eurostar once by a member of the counter-terrorism police and phoned him up and basically he'd spent the whole day fighting terrorists in Brussels and was actually kind of a bit traumatised, and that was the reason he'd been so horrible to me. Is there nothing that says that there is a general breakdown in society and actually these people are on the forefront of it, and now they are so beaten into the floor that in a sense they can't bring themselves to believe that there's any decent people left?
Well, no, because we know that they're not policing real crime, and it goes back to Rob Jenrick's video of them just letting fare dodgers through. The next day I got a message from a mate who also uses the line saying, I had absolutely no trouble with the barriers, I just ran past and they didn't do anything. The actual lawbreakers, they don't punish. I'm almost certain I was singled out because I'm weak, because I don't look like a threat, because I had a winking snowman jumper on, and therefore was probably not going to do anything.
So your belief, and it's something that we've talked about before, where we suggested that maybe for people who try and stop fare dodgers are racist. That is to say, what they do is they need to interact negatively with a certain number of people, so they don't bother with the people they believe are actual fare dodgers. They have a go at the weak people, so they can say we're doing our job.
Yes, once authoritarianism breaks out, bullying becomes legitimate. But in order to control it, the authoritarians say that it's only allowed against certain groups. I obviously, as a white middle-aged man, fit that group, and therefore was perfectly capable of being bullied. I've no doubt that's what this was. This was an abuse of power. It was a misuse of power by somebody who felt that they would get no consequences from it. And that's the danger in our society. That's why I'd rather deal with this by going after Chiltern Railway, because this is what corporate socialism does. You get to unleash authoritarianism, you get to unleash bullies, but against specific groups of people. And I don't want other people who are passengers of Chiltern Railways to go through. I don't want anybody to go through this. I wouldn't want Keir Starmer to go through this.
So when you say you're having to go at Chiltern Railways, look, as I say, I strongly believe you shouldn't complain to the police, because what will happen is they will automatically start investigating you, and that could place you in serious trouble. Do not touch the police with a barge pole; they're dangerous. But when we then say, particularly the Thames Valley Police, which I think will be Chiltern Railways' principal people, but then when you say you're going to do something about Chiltern Railways, what are you doing? Are you able to tell me?
So what I need to do at this stage is investigate potential causes of action to sue them.
Right.
That's the next step. And then there's a procedure for all of that, which obviously I'll go through. I'm being supported by the Free Speech Union, who are being absolutely amazing. I'm being supported by some other groups who've pushed them out, who volunteered and have come forward. You'd be amazed at how many people have seen the video and then immediately privately message me. The support has been great. This should not happen to anybody in our society. This is, if anything, I'm a canary in the coal mine, warning you that we have unleashed way too much authoritarianism. We need to treat each other with dignity and respect again. We need to go back to the idea that we're all valuable members of society, not that we're meat units to be pushed around, corralled, told what to do, and expected to comply. And that's what I'd like to fix, Andre. I mean, it might be ridiculously naive.
No, I think there's a weight of it. I mean, I think you've got to attempt to fight back about the way that we're being treated in this society, because what it seems to me is that we pay the taxes, we go out to work every day, and we are the enemy. We are the ones that get bullied, we are the ones that get intimidated. The bad people are good people. And as I've always said, we now live in a society where what you say is more important than what you do. If you allow rapists like Harvey Weinstein to get away with it, that is perfectly acceptable, as long as you put #MeToo at the end of your tweets.
Yes, and it's about that, the idea that you have to comply. And I don't like that just because intellectually it's very, very dull. But also, my crime in that station was not complying and going, yes, sir, no, sir, I'll do as I'll told. And I didn't even defy very much. I just defied with words, didn't defy with actions. But even that was too much.
Yeah, but a meathead's not going to like that, because what he's good at is thumping and what he's bad at is arguing.
Well, Churchill warned us that these people really hate being laughed at.
Yes.
And that's the one thing they really can't stand. So that's my crime, is that I wasn't taking him seriously and I was effectively laughing at him, although I obviously didn't laugh because that would be too rude.
So I want to ask you something, and it's this idea that you've been talking about misconduct in public office. We're going to talk about the Islamist in a minute. So, misconduct in public office is this idea, which, by the way, most of us have not thought about, which is where people in a position of power, if they misuse their power, they can go to prison for really quite a long time. And whilst you didn't suggest any names, you did say in one of the videos that I watched that if I was to be a pro-immigration activist who believes in 100% immigration, okay? And I get myself qualified as a legal professional and then become an immigration judge. If I use my position as an immigration judge to simply grant everyone who applies to come to Britain the right to stay in Britain because I'm an activist, that could potentially be something that could land me in prison if there was a proper investigation. Explain.
Yes, so I think you've summarised it brilliantly. I've heard a rumour, which I've not yet confirmed, that the Hillsborough Law, which is 68 pages long, by the way, totally unnecessary to have 68 pages for the alleged Hillsborough Law. But I've heard a rumour that that's trying to remove misconduct in the public office, so I need to have a look at it. But I think people are getting more sophisticated with law now. It's not what the law says now, it's the laws we write in future. And we may very well look to in creating some sort of consequences, because it's very simple. Humans behave badly when there are no consequences.
Yes.
And for certain people, if they recite the mantra, if they're in the cult, if they're behaving in a certain political way, there are no consequences for that. Far beyond that, Andre, it's not just there are no consequences for that. They are fated with titles, awards, and unearned success. So that, it's a great temptation. This system...
like Andrew Bailey, you can fail your way to the top.
Yes, exactly. And the New Year's Honours list is absolutely full of that.
Yes.
I mean, some absolutely disgraceful appointments, not least of all a knighthood for the West Midlands police guy. It was just unbelievable.
Oh, no, what about, was it an OBE for the woman that faked the documentary in Gaza? I mean, just unbelievable.
Shouldn't she face investigation for supporting Hamas?
Yeah, absolutely. Literally made a propaganda show for a terrorist. OBE, unbelievable.
Yeah, or Annalise Dodds, who pretends to not know a woman is, and therefore gets a damehood. Right. Okay, well, I've got a damehood.
They should have given her a knighthood. They should have made her Sir Annalise Dodds. Sorry, just because you've got a vagina, love. I'm sorry.
But we're going to have to go back to the idea of rules and consequences, particularly for those who wield power. Humans who wield power are always dangerous. They should never be unaccountable. And what Chiltern Railways is doing with dragging its heels and not admitting, as Mr. Gumbo did in basically about 15 minutes, that I'm obviously respectable and the problem is their staff, is that they are allowing this. They are making this consequence-free for people.
But if you look at what happened to Dame Shirley Porter, when I worked for Westminster City Council, was known as the DSP issue. I mean, she moved council tenants out of the centre of Westminster, something that I agree with, sold the flats to people, but the flats that she moved people into had asbestos and they got asbestosis and died, which of course is terrible. But she had to sell Tesco, or her shareholding in it, in order to pay off what was called the surcharge, which was that she was forced to pay up. She didn't pay it all, £35 million, that being the compensation. And they said at that time there was a law, now repealed. If you are so grossly negligent as you ought to have known better, then I'm afraid then it's not for Westminster City Council to pick up the bill. It's for you to pick up the bill. Now, if you are letting child sex offenders, murderers, rapists, whatever, into the United Kingdom as a immigration judge, and you know they're dangerous and you know they're not entitled, then I think you should be just as liable. But my other idea is this. I think there's a very simple thing. I think if you're in public office and you have defended by covering up grooming gangs, you should be just as prosecutable. And I'll tell you why. Because there's always this idea of a joint enterprise. I look at Sadiq Khan now. Sadiq Khan is saying there are no grooming gangs in London. Almost certainly, in the fullness of time, we will find out that there are grooming gangs in London, and we'll probably find out he was aware of grooming gangs in London. At that point, I believe that we should be able to prosecute him for all of the child rapes that took place as a result of him covering up.
Yes, well, when this abysmal government collapses, as it will collapse, and when we get a new government, I think all of these things will become possible. And the one person I really, offer free legal advice to right now is Wes Streeting. Do not put children who are 8 years old through a chemical castration trial. That is very likely that there will be legal consequences to you doing that.
Well, I remember, Stephen, when I was a little boy, and no doubt you watched this as well, we watched these programmes about Welsh care homes, where time and time again child sex offenders were put in charge of residential homes. And we thought, how on earth did they do it? And when everybody knew, that is what is going to happen with the Tavistock Clinic. It's already happening. The reality is, there's going to be documentaries in 20 years' time where they're going to say, why on earth did we continue to chemically castrate these children when we knew?
Yeah, we know right now that we are making these children infertile, we're lowering their bone density, and we're damaging their IQ. This is absolutely outrageous. When I was studying criminal law, you couldn't actually consent to anything near this. So I don't know quite how the law of consent has got itself into such a terrible position and they're going to say an 8-year-old can consent or a parent can consent for an 8-year-old. But when we get sanity back, I think we're going to change that. There's a lovely, once we get power back in this country in the hands of somebody vaguely sane, vaguely commonsensical and trustworthy and trying to be a decent human being, then I think all sorts of consequences are going to come, and I will have no sympathy for them. And the more they drag me across station concourses or try and say rude things about me on Twitter, the less sympathy I'm going to have.
Well, in fairness to Cheltenham Rail, they've not been rude about you. They've said, we are aware of the incident and are conducting an investigation internally to understand what happened. Also, there's been messages, Stephen, to thank you for everything that you do, and I want to thank you as well. You've been a friend to me for a long time, but also I think you are a hero. And look, you and I know each other well enough for me to be able to say that a number of institutions and people have pushed you around over the years, and despite your meek and mild exterior, there is a real steel at the back of you, and I congratulate you and thank you for that. But my viewers and listeners will fully support you in this, and I have to say to Chiltern Rail, I don't think you're the only offenders in the world. I don't think you're the worst people in the world. I just think that Stephen is right. This is something that is going right across the board.
It's time